Thank you for joining us for the ARC of Fort Bend County's Parent Education and Support Group meeting. My name is Carrie Axtell, and I serve as the Advocacy and Youth Programs Director. The ARC of Fort Bend County is a nonprofit organization dedicated to grassroots advocacy, family support, and providing a variety of social and recreational programs for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities from youth throughout adulthood. If you'd like to learn more about our mission and the programs that we offer, please visit us at arcoffortbend.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected. If you have questions during the presentation, if you'd like to either type them in the chat or hold them till the end, because our presenter will likely have lots of great things to say and might cover them. But I will then share the questions with our presenter, Carrie Handley, at the end. But today we are joined by Carrie Handley, who will share her family's journey about raising a child who has an intellectual and developmental disability, who's now a young adult, and the navigation of this daunting process of discovering which community services are available and finding their voice as a family in this grassroots advocacy process. Carrie recently published a book that chronicles their story and shows how their family's one idea, along with a whole lot of determination, ultimately did drive meaningful change in the Texas legislature. So we thank you, Carrie, for being here and sharing your family story.
Well, thank you, Carrie. Carrie and Carrie. It's a great story. It's a story of hope. It's something that we never ever expected to do in our lifetimes, and I appreciate everybody that joins. So, next slide, please. I just want to briefly introduce my family. I'm by trade a graphic designer and print professional. I'm also the special needs advisor for my husband's law office and caretaker and chauffeur and co-guardian of our daughter, Caitlin. And our bill, HB 1188, is named after her. Next slide, please. That is Team Handley at one of the area resource fairs. You'll often see us um, crossing paths with other great organizations and companies to help families like ours navigate a very complicated maze of special needs planning and parenting. Boyd does estate planning, which are wills and trusts, including special needs trusts. He does probate and elder care. That's for everybody. And then he has a concentration on special needs planning and guardianship and alternatives to guardianship. Next slide, please. And the young lady this bill is named for, our daughter Caitlin, nickname is Perky. She's got an amazing smile and personality, and people just fall in love with her. She does have 4 jobs, 6 days a week. And as I mentioned, the new law is named after her, and I'll tell you a little bit later how that happened. So, okay, next slide. HB 1188, now named the Caytlin Handley Act, it helps families like ours, those who have a loved one with an intellectual disability or developmental delay. The one thing to really know about this bill is it was never going to help our family. It didn't affect our family at all. What we did was to help other families um, like ours get the information and knowledge that they need when we didn't have that. Um, and those black boxes are, oh, okay, there we go. All right, so most of us know, I believe, what a LIDA is, but I'll explain it. It's a local intellectual and developmental disability authority, and they are the organizations in each county. I believe there are 39 in the state of Texas, and they facilitate waiver programs, which is what this bill is about, but they help families with information and resources and referrals and just tremendous supports throughout the lifetime of their families like ours. Okay, next slide. This cute little girl is Caitlin at age 14 in 2008, and that is the year that we learned about the LIDAs and waiver programs. Now, waiver programs provide services and supports. There's a slide that'll show a list of those supports. Um, At the time that we learned about the waiver programs, we were actually at a private school, and the director of the private school suggested that I attend a program at the MHMRA, which is now known as the Harris Center. And that program was all about Medicaid waiver programs. And I'm wondering, why did I not hear about this before? Now, Caitlin was 14, and in keeping with the state law, at the time before our bill, families were told about waiver programs and referred to or given information about the local IDD authorities when their child was at age 14 and attending the adult transition planning meeting. We were told there was a 10 to 12-year waiting list. That turned out to be untrue at the time. And we were wondering, what led up to this bill is after 14 years on the what's called the interest lists, we finally uh, said, well, why did they why did they wait until age 14 to tell us about this? Because Caitlin was first diagnosed in the school system at age 2. Had we known about it and gotten on these interest lists earlier, we could have had services much, much earlier. As it turned out, we ended up waiting 17 years. And while we were going through this advocacy journey last year, that's when we finally got HCS, the Home and Community-Based Services, the waiver program that Caitlin has. Next slide, please. Okay, I just wanted to show what the bill actually looked like. Um, it it was quite the process of going through it. But after our bill was passed into law last year, families are now told about the waiver programs and other public benefits and given information about the local IDD authorities at the first ARD meeting after the diagnosis of an intellectual disability or developmental delay, which saves many, many years of parents on this interest list. The bill was effective immediately, so it began in the 2025-26 school year. Interest lists, when we got on the HCS waiver program, were now 15 to 20 years instead of 10 to 12 years. Next slide, please. I'm not sure why these black boxes are here or if everybody can see them, but that's not part of my program. Okay, so waiver programs, basically they help keep your child with you or in the community instead of being institutionalized or put into a state-supported living center. It's funding that is a much less amount of funding than it costs to institutionalize your child. And as far as I'm concerned, the best place for Caitlin is home with us. So these waiver programs offer supports that do help keep her in the community. So you can see there's a list there. I think you can read most of it outside the black boxes, but everything from personal care attendance services to supported employment, respite care. There's a whole host of things that these cover. Therapies, for example, some residential habilitation. We have the host home provider care, which is where I am now a paid caregiver for Caitlin, and that really helps. That really helps us in our daily lives. Okay, next slide, please. As of last year, when we got the waiver programs, and I think up until this year, there are about 194,000 individuals on these interest lists for waiver programs. To put that into perspective, I've understood that's about the size of the city of Frisco, Texas. So that is a huge amount of people on the waiting lists. As I mentioned, we went from 10 to 12 years in 2008 to 15 to 20 years now. The number of slots each year that the legislature is in session in Texas, which is every other year on odd numbered years, they release a certain amount of waiver slots. Now, there's a little bit of a discrepancy this year as to how it was done and how many slots there were. We were told it was going to be about 946 statewide. And that's for the next 2 years. And it turns out that there's probably going to be quite a few less than that because of how they did the funding this year. Carrie has more information about that. Um, but because is such a long wait period for services, we really recommend that families get signed up for waiver programs as soon as possible, because that way it'll minimize the amount of time you have to wait once your child turns 18. Some of these services are for under 18. The vast majority are for over 18, or critical issues. So, okay, next slide, please.
Carrie, do you want me to try to see and switch instead of doing this presentation mode, maybe to see a different view of it that might
We can try that,
black box? Let me try that just briefly. Let me see. Um,
or I can try it from mine if that doesn't work.
so let me see here. Maybe this other view. Let me see. I'm gonna share screen again and see if it helps. Okay, so this is not the presentation view, but are you seeing black boxes now? Is that better?
Not that's taking up the slide. There's one at the
Okay,
top and one at the bottom.
so maybe
Okay.
we'll just,
Let's
whoops.
back up to the, okay. All right,
So,
next slide, please.
okay.
Okay. What we did was, let me explain how HB 1188 came about. Um, in 2022, in the fall, is when I just decided I need to do something about this. To why are we waiting till age 14? So coincidentally, the ARC of Texas sent around a survey called Waiting on a Waiver. They wanted opinions from people as to their experiences on the waiver program list or getting waiver services. I answered it. I don't remember what I wrote, but all I know is I got a phone call from somebody from the ARC of Texas, who I later found out was the chief executive officer of the ARC, Jennifer Martinez. We were on the phone for 40 minutes. And at the end, she invited my family and I to the Texas Advocates Conference that year in Round Rock, to record a part of a video for the Arc of the United States, because they wanted to show the Arc of the United States how difficult things can be in Texas when you're waiting on a waiver. So we showed up there. Caitlin and I went. Boyd had just had hip surgery, so couldn't attend. Um, and the first thing I said to her was, I don't understand. Why are we waiting 14 years to tell families? And Jennifer says, you know what? It's a really good question. We're going to help you find the answer. And they took the lead. So this was in 2023 in that legislative session, the 88th legislative session. And they guided us. They found our primary bill author. They found our Senate sponsor. They, you know, I heard later that they thought I'd already advocated because I was being able to express myself very well in this, but we didn't get involved. And I'm going to show you exactly what happened, the differences between the 88th and 89th legislative session. But the Arc of Texas was invaluable. Now, we started out with Ashley Ford, who was the director of public policy and advocacy, and Mason Whiteside, who was the deputy director. And then they left after that session, and we went on to Sabrina Gonzalez Acedo, who's the director, and Michael Clark, who's the deputy director. And they have been phenomenal help with us all throughout this legislative session. But much to Sabrina's credit, she did not show me this exactly every step of the way that you have to go through, 56 steps in our case. That would, I think, have been a bit overwhelming to us. They just hit the highlights. They just said, okay, now you're going to testify here, and then it goes to the committee, and then they didn't say, okay, we have a bill substitution and all of this, but it worked out to our benefit. So in the 88th, it usually takes, from what I understand, 3 times to get a bill passed. So we weren't really very hopeful. We didn't get involved. We didn't go to legislative office. We just let the ARC take control on this. And because I came up with this idea late in the year before the session started, we ended up with a very high bill number, 4716. And so while we made it through the House, we stalled in the Senate. We never got heard in the Senate. they ran out of time. So then we had to wait and go through this again. And we made a decision at that point. Um, we were going to be much more proactive. We were going to learn how to do this. And so we had some guidance from the Arc of Texas. A lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about came from me and my business dealings as a graphic designer and a business owner in this area. Um, I just combined everything and I was very organized. What we ended up doing was our primary bill author re-upped. He has two family members with disabilities. He knows how important this bill is. So he was on board from the get-go. And then our Senate sponsor from the last session decided that they didn't get back to us to re-up. And I read his biography and I was wondering why the Arc of Texas had chosen this particular senator. I mean, he's a great senator, but had no connection to the disability community. So I went online and I read on the Capitol legislative website, I read all 31 biographies oh, there we go again. The 31 biographies of the senators in the state of Texas. And I narrowed it down to two. And the one that I really wanted was the one that ended up accepting and being an amazing champion for our bill, and that was Dean Senator Judith Zaffirini. Our primary bill author for both sessions is Christian Manuel, Representative Christian Manuel out of the Beaumont area, and Dean Zaffirini is out of the Laredo area. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, from January to the end of May in 2025, my family and I made visits to the Capitol every 1 to 2 weeks. Um, my mother was wonderful. She kept offering to watch Caitlin, and I know, because she felt we could get it a lot done if she watched Caitlin and Boyd and I just went. And I said, no, you don't understand. This bill is about Caitlin and people like her. And so she has to be there to show these legislators that our bill affects real people. It's not about a statistic or a number. It's about people. And so having her there, and then you can see in these pictures, every picture has her holding her stuffed bunny, Emma. Emma is a very well loved and very well known in the Capitol, emotional support stuffed bunny that Caitlin has had for many years. And originally, when she asked if she could take Emma with us, Boyd just said, no, no. And I said, no, no, she has to take Emma with her because she's going to go into these offices, say she's 31 years old, holding a stuffed bunny, and that's going to affect people. That's the emotion is going to be there. So up in the upper left-hand corner of this slide is our primary bill author, Representative Christian Manuel, an amazing, amazing champion for us. And then in the upper right-hand corner is Dean Senator Zaffirini. And then throughout these slides, these are not all of the legislators that we met with, just a smattering of them, but some of these are our either our joint authors or our co-authors. One of them is a Senate co-sponsor of the bill as well. Meeting with legislators. Well, first of all, I went into that. We went into this. We didn't even know who our representative was and who our senator was. We didn't even know the difference between a representative and a senator. And truthfully, we had no experience whatsoever. Grassroots advocacy does not need any prior experience. But we didn't even realize that these offices would be willing to meet with us, even if we weren't in their district. So I said, okay, great. We have something to work with here. It's not about the prestige of meeting with these legislators. What it is about is making sure that your message and your passion gets through to the person that's going to be making the decision on this. Now, that is not always possible because they get busier and busier as the session goes on. And most of the time, we were meeting with the legislative staff, legislative aides, the directors, the chief of staffs, things like that. And you had to make sure that your message is getting across. So what we did was I created a full packet of information to give to the legislative offices that talked about our bill, that We had created a survey and we had some survey responses in there. We had a one pager from the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities. We had our own one pager. We had the ARC of Texas's one pager. We had a list of supporters of our bill. Being in the disability community and going to resource fairs, we had a ton of supporters on this bill. And what that does is that shows these legislators, oh, I'm looking at this list, all of these people, they could be in my district. They can vote for me or not vote for me. Let me see what I can do to help. And that it showed also that these organizations and companies backed our bill and thought it was important enough to push through. So, okay, next slide, please. There are 150 state representatives in Texas and 31 senators. We had meetings in 50 House offices. We had 20 meet and greets with representatives. Now that doesn't sound like we got very far through, but we actually did. One of the things I did is I'm pretty analytical when it comes to things like this, or my daughter or our daughter, I should say, because my husband's on this Zoom. Um, but I took bills in Texas are read on the House floor 3 times and voted on twice. So I took the 2 votes from the last session when it was HB 4716 and I analyzed them. I looked to see who voted for the bill, who voted against the bill. I did that for the first and for the second. And I found a couple of interesting things. All of one party voted in favor of our bill, and some of the other party voted for it, but most of the other party didn't. So that right there told me this was a bill that was probably not understood because it was voted along party lines. Then I looked at the votes between the first vote and the second vote, and I said, okay, these people voted for it initially and then voted against it when it came back. And I said, okay, this is something that we can work with. So I first went and said, okay, it's going to be heard in the House Committee on Public Education. We need to meet with as many of those members as possible. Then I wanted to meet with the people that voted for it first and against it second. And then we said we're going to meet with the ones that just voted straight no both times. So that left most of one party where we didn't feel the need, as much of a need, to meet with those offices. We needed to concentrate on the offices that did not vote for us either the first time, the second time, or both times. So that's how I analyzed this, and that's why we didn't meet in 150 representatives' offices. We needed to spend our time meeting in different offices. And in the Senate, we had a very little time left in the session, but we managed 27 meetings in Senate offices and 4 meet and greets with senators. And these were really good meetings. Senators are harder because they handle a broader spectrum of the population. They're harder to get in with. Okay, go ahead and let's move to the next slide, please. All right, don't play the video just yet. So this moment that you're going to see is what pushed our bill far beyond anything we had ever expected. In the first session, we all went up and stood, but I was the only one to testify. And the night before, the night before we were to testify, we went to dinner with the former deputy director of public policy and advocacy for the ARC of Texas. And he said, oh no, you all need to testify, especially Caytlin. Well, we were not really sure how Caytlin would do testifying as a self-advocate. We've never pushed her or put her in that position before. But out of this testimony, and you could see the looks on the members of the education committee's faces as she was testifying, that they were starting to see this in a different way. Remember the chairman, Chairman Buckley, we've seen him in many hearings, and he's always very professional, very stoic. I have pictures of him smiling. I mean, I think he made what happened next happen. But in that hearing, after we testified, after all the other people that came up to testify did so, and we were still there waiting, our representative went up to close on the bill. He called us back to the table. We had we weren't even sure we were supposed to do that, but we went up there, and it turns out that the members decided. Rep. Dutton made the motion to rename the bill, which was formerly known as the Handley Bill, to the Caytlin Handley Act, and to vote it out of committee unanimously, 12-0, which what I understand from many representatives that we talked to is they don't do this. This is something that is really, really, both of these things, very rare that it happens. So I'd like to play this video of Caytlin testifying.
Hi, I'm Caytlin Handley. This is my well-loved bunny, Emma. I'm 31 years old. I have special needs. I'm here to represent myself and support HB 1188 and the Handley Bill. I want to help others, people like me.
All right, Caytlin, thank you very much for your testimony.
And that right there is what propelled our bill from that moment on. Okay, we can go to the next slide. The most emotional moments happened in this 6 minutes that this video is. We found out, so every day I would go on the Capitol website, I would follow our bill, I would see if there's movement. And one day I'm visiting at my mother's house, and I see on there that we're going to be heard in the bill is going to be heard on the House floor the next day. So I called Rep. Manuel's office and I talked to his chief of staff, and she said, "We don't know anything about that. Let me call you back." And she called me back within a few minutes and she said, "Yes, you're going to be heard tomorrow." So we had to board the dog, get hotel reservations, cancel appointments, get Caytlin off of work, pack, and get up to the Capitol that day so that we could be there in the gallery, which is sitting above the House floor, as our bill is being laid out. Now, we were directly facing the podium, and we had representatives. You can't see how many people were up there. More and more join as the video goes on, but you can't see how wide it is. We didn't even know some of the people that were standing beside Rep. Manuel as he's laying the bill out on the floor. And we went in there and we had one primary bill author. We had 3 joint authors. And the next day, we found out we had added another joint author and picked up 13 co-authors. So that was pretty outstanding. But if you'd play this video, it's hard for me to watch this and not get emotional again, but go ahead.
Chair recognizes Mr. Manuel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm sorry, this is going to be just a little long of a layout. HB 1188 is something that is hugely important to not me, but to so many members here on this floor. It deals with children who have intellectual disabilities. The family, Caytlin, is here, her mom and her dad, and so many people. And I want to take a moment to thank everyone on the Public Education Committee that was there that day, that voted that bill out, and what that meant to so many people in this community, so many people in our community, to my godson, to my nephew, to everyone who has IDD. I hope you know you are special, you are normal, you are loved, you are the future, and we will do everything to protect you here in Texas, in this house, and you have more value than you will ever know, and you are more loved than you will ever know. HB 1188, currently school districts refer students with IDD to their local IDD authority for services and public benefits at the age of 14. Now with this bill, all we're doing is saying that once a child finds out and has a diagnosis with IDD, they are able, with their parents or their guardian, to be able to get on the registry, know what they need, and to stop this process of making people wait 14 to 16 years and being 30 years old. I want you all to just think for a second that you have a child who has IDD and you have to wait till they are 30 or 31 years old to get the services that they are supposed to get. We should never allow that to happen. And I am so thankful to everyone. I have 2 amendments. They are acceptable. I am thankful to everyone. And I am so thankful to you, Caytlin, for your advocacy, for your hard work, for your determination. And you said, I just want to make life better for people like me. And you have made life better for people like you and all of us.
Yes, I'm tearing up again. So that was an amazing moment. We never ever expected anything like this. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, here's the difference between the 88th and 89th legislative sessions. As I mentioned, in the 88th session, we met with the Arc of Texas about our idea. They did all the groundwork on it, and we showed up to testify. That was the extent. So in this session, being more proactive, we worked again with them and the Arc of Texas and our bill author on the bill substitution language. What Rep. Manuel did, which was so brilliant, was he took our original language from HB 4716 in the previous session and just refiled that bill in the fall before the session was going to start last year. And that way we had a much lower bill number, which would give us greater chance of being heard earlier. Bill substitutions are expected, and we worked together. We were actually, Caytlin and I, Boyd was up for a legal conference in Austin. We tagged along and met in Rep. Manuel's office, and we all sat down and fine-tuned. The Arc of Texas was there, Rep. Manuel, 2 of his staff members, and Caytlin and myself. And we fine-tuned the language to make it a little bit more appealing and understandable to people that might not understand disability issues. Then, as I mentioned, I researched the senators to find the perfect Senate sponsor. I set all of the appointments, and the way that's done is you call each office and you ask for the scheduler's email, then you email and you have a conversation back and forth to set dates. So I did all of that. And the information packets, we found out that we've been told by many people that information packet, they said some people come in here to advocate for things and they have nothing. And some people just show up with a 1-pager. They said, when you showed up with this packet, we had everything we needed to be able to give it to our either representative or senator for them to be able to make the decision. It was all right there. They didn't have to do any further research, which is really an important thing for them because they have so much going on. We also, based on advice from one of the offices we were in, we created lapel pins that, well, at the time it said the Handley bill because that's what it was known as. She suggested labels and that the members could wear on the House floor, but we did, being an overachiever, I created these lapel pins, which also gave them a memento to hold on to. Okay, we found the bill supporters in the disability community. We worked with local media. In the fall before, this whole thing was a series of coincidences. The fall before, so I guess 2024 in the fall, Labor Day. A couple of days before Labor Day, I had read an online article about one of our local business owners. And I never do this. I never look at the bio of the person who wrote the article. But I did in this case. Something told me to look at it. And it turns out that the author has a child with a disability. So I said, well, I wonder if she would be interested in hearing all about HB 1188. And as it turned out, she was. And so on Labor Day, she interviewed me that was on our local news station, and then the follow-up article was online. So I also had that follow-up article in the packet of information. And we are still in contact with that media person because she was incredible and she's been a big supporter. And then, along with the ARC of Texas, all of us testified before both the House and the Senate Education Committees. And here's where the business skills came in. I followed up every single visit with an email. Boyd would be driving back from Austin, and I would be on my iPad writing emails thanking the legislative staff for the visit and recounting what it was. We kept all of the business cards. You always ask for a business card because the person you schedule with is not always the person that you're going to be meeting with. So it's important that you know who you've met with. If we met with a representative, we took a picture. I wrote a handwritten note. I enclosed the picture, wrote on the back what bill it was, and sent it in the mail. Each time and Caitlin colored pictures for the legislators, and we would deliver those on our next visit. So what that does is, in the business world, they're called touches. So everything you do is a touch, and it was just one more touch to make them remember her, us, and our bill. I also kept those business cards came in handy because I kept every time the bill moved forward, I was sending emails to the legislative staff that we met with. Our bill, thank you again for talking with us about our bill. It has now moved to whatever stage it was in. We would appreciate you remembering us when it comes to the floor for a vote. And then the ARC of Texas worked with TEA and HHSC, the Health and Human Services Commission, to fine-tune the language that was going to go into a handout that the families were going to get because of our bill, if the bill should pass. So, all right, next slide, please. When we testified in front of the Senate Education Committee, there were not enough senators there for a quorum. It was late in the session, and they're all on other panels as well. But Rep. Manuel showed up as we were testifying to watch the proceedings, and he pulled us aside when we came down and said, I have something for Caitlin. Can you bring her to the office when everybody else is done testifying? So we waited till all the other people that were testifying in support of our bill were done, and we went down to his office. What Caitlin is holding is the actual gavel that was used to vote her bill off the House floor. That was the most amazing gift that I never knew you could get. The next slide should be a close-up picture of it. So there's the gavel in the box as it was given to Caitlin, and it says gavel used to pass House Bill 1188, April 24th, 2025, presented to Caitlin Handley by Speaker Dustin Burrows and Rep. Christian Manuel. And we had a shadow box, an acrylic shadow box created for this, for the gavel, and it sits in our living room. Next slide, please. This is the last page of the signed and filed bill with the governor's signature. Next slide. Okay, to tell you how challenging it can be to have bills passed in Texas, there were 8,719 total bills filed. Of those, 1,213 bills passed both chambers, and 28 were vetoed by the governor. So that means 1,185 total bills were passed, a little over 13.5%. So you have to go into, if you're going to do grassroots advocacy, it's helpful to know statistics like this because it will help you, it'll help guide you on how you want to present yourself and your bill proposals, and going forward, how you make that happen. Next slide, please. I had never anticipated TEA and HHSC coming up with a document that is as descriptive. It's the most amazing thing, far beyond what we had ever expected it to be. It is a 3-page document with QR codes talking about what qualifies as a disability, QR codes for each of the waiver programs in Texas. It's got a place for the school contact. It's got a place for the local IDD information. It is very, very comprehensive. And if you want to take a picture of that slide at the bottom, you can log in. We found out that this is available on the SPED website in over 30 languages. That was something else that we were not expecting. So amazing document that they did. And what we did in our family is we printed these pages, but we have our bill on the back just so people can see where this came from as we go to resource fairs. Okay, next slide. This photo was taken at about 7 in the morning, right before we went into the Reagan building to testify in support of our bill. She did not want to take this picture, but I forced her to, and it ended up being the cover of my book. And I said on this slide that Caitlin's question was answered. So throughout Caitlin's life, she's really had one question. Why does she have special needs? And as many as you can imagine, it's a heartbreaking question. And for us, there was no answer. We had nobody on either side of our family, to our knowledge, that has a disability. You know, you start blaming yourself. You're not blaming, I didn't have an answer. So I would tell her, look, everybody has something. Some people have things you can't see, depression or anxiety, and some people are in wheelchairs, and some people have learning disabilities, and you have special needs. But that was really never enough for her. So when I went to Caitlin and I said, I just found out your bill was signed into law by the governor. It's going to be a new law. She very calmly looked at me and said, Mommy, I'm glad I have special needs. And that right there, showing Caitlin what we set out to do, is that one family can truly make a difference. That was the most amazing thing that we heard from her. So we are grateful for this experience. And then we have one more slide. This is my book. The way it came about is after I sent the emails driving back from Austin, I realized that I would remember the highlights, but I wanted to remember everything about the experience. And so I started writing this down more for myself than anything else. And I've always liked to write. And I realized as I'm going through this that these strategies that we feel could really help other families. Remember, none of this this bill did not affect our family at all. And so we were hoping that out of this would come some more good, that maybe other families will advocate for their own passions. And so I was writing about that. And then I realized, well, okay, I have to write about Caitlin because she's the reason all of this came about. And so that's how this book came out. It's been out for about a month, available on Amazon. There's the QR code if you're so inclined. But I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank Carrie for asking me to share our story. It truly was one of the most amazing things we've ever done in our lives, especially when we knew nothing going into it. So I will say that when this was over, I have a friend who's not on Facebook, and I called her and I was telling her about the bill, and she was so excited. And she said, that's terrific. I'm so proud of you. Next time you do this, why don't you talk about, and I said, look, why don't you do it? And she said, well, I don't have a husband who's a lawyer and I don't know anything. And I said, having a husband who's a lawyer does not help in any way, shape, or form in the legislature. None. He was in as much of a dark than I was, and we knew nothing going into it. So I don't want anybody to think that their voice can't be heard, because it can. You just have to make a commitment. Now, I'm not saying that everybody can go up there every 1 to 2 weeks. It just so happened, this whole series of coincidences that happened throughout this whole process, somebody was looking out for us from above. And but you do it at your level. And if you don't have a child that, not every child is going to be able to be helpful in the Capitol. Only you know that. But that doesn't mean you can't get involved. So That's really the message that I hope everybody takes from this. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, it really is an incredible story. So before Carrie started the presentation, we were talking a little bit. I did have the opportunity. I've been reading about their family story, and this presentation really hit on kind of maybe just the center of the book. But at the beginning of the book, what is kind of lays the foundation is your family story, just the journey of you as parents, which so many of us as parents will identify with and understand of, just not knowing. You don't know what your life, what is going to be in front of you. And I have a couple quotes I want from the book because I think they're very poignant. So one is here it says, in the beginning of our journey in the 2025 89th legislative session, in each meeting we had, I mentioned that we just wanted Caitlin to understand that one family can make a difference. She has always said that she wants to help other people, and it seems that we found a way for her to do that. Giving of herself through the many visits to Austin, the interruption of her daily schedule, and pushing past her comfort zone, both in the legislative offices and by testifying as a self-advocate for the first time, were some of the best ways to help not only others, but herself as well. So that's, to me, a big part of it too, is that you guys, this changed your life. I mean, it made her a self-advocate, and it's not that you set out to do that. It just kind of happened along the way. And that's kind of like the same way our lives are as families who have a loved one with special needs, is none of us know the future. We all just take one step in front of the other, and but continuing to have faith in the process, and continuing on and knowing that there's other families like ours, like yours out there, that we all get together and that we can support one another. That's what makes this journey and this growth that we're all experiencing together so just poignant. So thank you for writing the book. I enjoyed I identified with it, a lot, and the courage your family had. And it was a lot of work. No doubt, a lot of work.
Well, two things I want to say is by the time we were halfway through our legislative process, we could walk down the halls of the Capitol, and all of a sudden a representative would stop, turn around because he or she saw Caitlin, and give her a hug. I mean, they'd come back to give her a hug. The other thing I want to say is that we're not done. We have already made a trip to Austin, and we're scheduled to have another one coming up. We have two legislative bill proposals that we are working on. One of them, I'm not ready to discuss just yet, but one of them is an expansion of HB 1188 so that it will be available at every ARD meeting, because as parents, we go into these ARD meetings, and especially the first one, you are bombarded with information, and you're told all these things your child will never do. I don't even want to say, well, it's in the book, but what we had some educators say to us, which was so hurtful. And so we feel like if it's at every ARD meeting, which was our original goal to begin with, but we didn't want to. We felt like if we went in there guns blazing, we wanted it every ARD meeting, it would be too overwhelming. That's why we settled on the very first ARD. But now that the framework is in place with this document, we feel like now is a good time to do that.
Very good. And I'm looking to see if we have questions. Please put them in the chat. So we've got one of our viewers here is saying, "Thank you so much for sharing your story. I will purchase your book. Your husband helped my husband, and I set up our son's guardianship, and he was also helpful with the many questions that they had." So there's good feedback there. And yes, you may, like Carrie mentioned earlier, they are Team Handley out there in the community at many different resource fairs, sharing their information. They just are helping other families like themselves, and they've lived it and gone through it themselves, and are now blessed to be able to help others navigate the process to guardianship and having a young adult with disabilities. So Any other questions? If you'd like to unmute, you're welcome to do that and then ask directly, or if you want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to read it. But I think
Maybe I covered everything.
well, this was definitely, it was a great primer on that legislative process and that advocacy. And I will say, Carrie, I will, as a chapter of the ARC, and we work closely with the ARC of Texas, and when it comes time for that next legislative session, us as members of the ARC of Fort Bend County, we need to have all of our voices together so that we can share our perspective, share our story, just like the Hanleys have done. Your family has a story, and if we can work together and kind of put that in this kind of a professional framework, like Carrie has discovered how to do, and using her business background to put that together. We want to work together to do that. So Carrie, we might be working with you in the future, just as as our families want to just, how do I do this? But I would say, I think it's chapter 14 in the very back. It's a great lessons for advocates, and it is like it's the playbook for grassroots advocacy. If you want to do this for yourself, it kind of lays out the many different aspects to just kind of start with.
I
So
want to see if Boyd is, I don't know if he's able to unmute and show his video. He may be on a phone call, I'm not sure, but I wanted to introduce him. I guess he's probably on another call. Oh, there he is.
I'm here.
So I just wanted to introduce the driving force, literally driving. But Boyd had, he wasn't sure how he would like going and meeting in these legislative offices. And you want to talk about that just for a second?
Yeah, it was real interesting. I'm an old guy now, but if I had done this a lot early in my career, I would definitely get into politics because, we found out all those guys and ladies there, they're just really nice people. And, they were so gracious to our family and all of that. So, I definitely will tell everyone to go meet your representatives. We didn't know, as Carrie said, we didn't know ahead of time much, but it's absolutely fascinating. And it, as Carrie said, it really changed our lives, and definitely see what's going on in Austin. There's a lot of good things happening, a lot of interesting things happening, but they're all the legislators and senators are really good people. So they really are out to help everyone in Texas.
One anecdote I forgot to share is we were in, I told you that I checked the voting between the first and second votes of the first bill. And there was one representative, I'm not going to mention who it was, but we were in his office. He wanted to meet with us directly, and we were in his office. He had voted against it both times in that first session. And of course, you can't go in there asking why. Even though you want to know, you can't go in. We just assumed he really didn't know what the bill was about. So we're sitting there and he's listening to this and he said, "This makes perfect sense. I don't know why anybody would vote against it." And I'm sitting there thinking, but you did. So that right there showed me that they didn't really understand the bill the first time around. And it took us getting into the legislature and talking in these offices to make them understand. Same bill, just how they looked at it.
Right, right. Well, I will send this recording and the copy of the PowerPoint as well to everybody who registered for the program. And then it will also be shared on the ARC's Facebook page. It will be shared on the ARC of Fort Bend County's Facebook page and the ARC of Fort Bend County's YouTube channel as well. And this will serve as a continuing resource for our families. So if you want to share this out with other families, if you ever have questions or need copies of, again, the video or the PowerPoint, please contact me here at the ARC of Fort Bend County, and we will certainly want to make sure that this continues to be a resource for those who need it. But
I think somebody
Carrie,
unmuted. I don't know if they have a question.
go
I
ahead
just
if
had
you do.
a comment. Hi, Carrie.
Hi.
I just wanted to mention also that because you said that it is overwhelming when you sit and get a diagnosis of your child and they tell you what your child won't be able to do. I got my niece well, she's a relative, but my niece and I adopted her through adoption. And it is overwhelming when you get these children and you don't know they have those intellectual disabilities, and you're trying to work through the medical community, try to figure out what they have, and then the school to try to figure out how do you help them and support them. That is overwhelming as well. And then you try to navigate, what do I do and how do I do it? So it has been a struggle for me to just find out what resources are available. And I actually ran across the Fort Bend Arc, and I've been to some of the resources that you guys have been to. But initially, it was just overwhelming because I'm trying to medically, educationally find out how do I support her. And find out also that the schools have no clue. So they're just not knowledgeable of the resources that are out there, so they can't communicate that to us.
Yeah, I know it's overwhelming as families, and that's why we really need support all throughout our lives. It's, we're supporting our loved one from, birth all throughout their life, and as families and as sibling caregivers, because it's usually that next generation that then steps in. Everybody throughout the whole life of the person really needs that support. So we're grateful for you sharing your stories, and all of us together sharing our stories will be impactful there at the legislature. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video recording here, but Carrie and Boyd, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for taking the time to write the book, Carrie. It's going to be I think maybe a more impactful tool than maybe you even imagined initially.
I hope so. I mean, that's where our family is just in it to help other families. That's why we do the resource fairs. That's why we do all of this, just because we don't want other families to struggle as much in the way that we initially did when Caitlin was young. So thank you for asking me to share.
Absolutely. Thank you.